We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. The Bengals improved to 6-8 on the season, winning 37-27. And I want to say this first, Mike. We were right. It was a 10-point game. At one point, it was 31-21. But with 2 minutes to go, both teams scored. And I thought, wow, we're going to really hit the nail on the correct prediction. The score, Bengals get a win. But what a game for the Cincinnati Bengals. You go in there on the offensive side of the ball. There was news Saturday night that Cody Ford was dealing with an illness. He was going to be listed as questionable. I still thought he's probably going to go in the game on Sunday, but he tried in pregame, didn't work. Devin Cochran gets the start. That makes me a little nervous because obviously Joe had a little bit of a limited week with the knee, but you couldn't tell when he was out there that there was any issue. I think he's just dealing with soreness. But that made me nervous because their interior is bad, and you're having another backup at tackle, and then Amarius Mims is your starter on the other side. Let's start with offense, and we can talk a little Joe turnovers. They happened. They're a point of the conversation. Joe was pretty upset after the game with how he played, penalties, and just kind of the stuff on the offensive side of the ball. But overall, Bengals win, 10-point win on the road. Offense, how you feeling?
I mean, even with the turnovers, Joe Burrow was still at 0.31 EPA per play and 8.4% completion percentage over expected, success rate of 56%, and on late downs, as he's done all season, 67% on the late passes, which is in the 96th percentile. Insane. He was still good in this game. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
protect the ball better, but that first interception, I don't know what happened other than his new left tackle got absolutely destroyed, and it felt like he kind of wanted to pull the throw back, but then didn't. It was weird, but cooled down or picked it up after that. Cooled down his, mechanics. Let's take a step back. Let's relax and get it under control. Is what I mean when I say that. But yeah, I thought he was good. I don't think they said this is like the second or sixth or whatever best defense, and that's by yards per game. They were like bottom five in points per game. Weird conundrum. Makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense when you watch this game. Will Levis love all the wrong jersey, so they're playing a lot of short fields. So I mean, I think the defense is all right. I don't want to think that they're better than they are either.
Mhm.
It was an okay game from Burrow. Pretty good outside of the turnovers, but the turnovers matter. They didn't really matter in this game. They would in a bigger game. The defense played well. We'll get to them. But when it comes to the offense, I thought the wide receivers stood out. You know, you have Jamar Chase running for a ton of yards after the catch on a slant, and T. Higgins catching that big touchdown down the right side of the field. I thought
Yeah.
Gesicki had a good game. Chase Brown obviously had a good game. So a lot of guys on offense had good games. And I thought Burrow, I would describe it as a pretty good game. I don't think it was bad. I don't
Yeah.
think it was great up to his standard, throwing two interceptions, not ideal. I think the second one, he also got blasted on that one by Cordell Volson's guy. I think it was Harding G that actually blasted him on both interceptions. At least it might have been. That's why I think he underthrew that one. Just trying to throw the ball 50 yards downfield while a 300 and whatever 305-pound guy is laying into you. That's tough. He's had to do it all year. I know during this game at points I was a little bit concerned about Joe's health because I felt like
Mhm.
the guards once again had terrible games. And then the left tackle was a roller coaster. I think Ford might be a little bit better than Cochran,
Hmm.
but I also think Cochran was better than the two guards when I watched. He's clearly athletic. I think a little out of control with his technique, but also he actually has a little nasty to him, likes finishing,
Mhm.
likes putting guys in the ground. Felt like at times you could see him. He's like, I'm playing for like a job. I'm playing to make a roster, just like pushing guys through the echo of the whistle. When the whistle happens, he waits until that sound completely stops. Doesn't stop at the start of the whistle. He's
Mhm.
trying to move his guy until the sound of the whistle completely ends. And I respected that. I think it showed to me some desperation, something that a lot of this offensive line hasn't had. It feels like complacency you could talk about with the Bengals defense and the Bengals offensive line, just not having guys that are pushing them in this competition until Ford took Volson's job last week. But it felt like you had a guy that was desperate to see the field more in Cochran. And I like that. I think he was a little out of control, pass protection and the run game, but there's stuff to like with him. And he's an athlete. You could see that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, like you said, he's playing for a job, and this team needs all the depth they can get, and starters at the moment with Cody Ford, their current starter, while Orlando Brown Jr. is out. And then, we'll get to the interior play in just a moment. But Joe gave him props in his press conference. He said, obviously, when he went out there, he had to settle down a little bit. And then when he did, Joe thought he stepped up and did a really good job out there. So, when your quarterback's saying that and you protect him, doing enough to protect him. There was the one play where he did slam the defender to the ground, and it was on Joe Burrow's scramble for a touchdown. It was really, it's great. It's a good highlight. Fans should go back and watch that. You want to see that out of these offensive linemen. It's been a pretty tough year for that. But kind of just bouncing off into the interior. I didn't know it was possible for a player to get a 0.
I will say those post-game grades, they are trash.
It was at halftime.
Yeah, but those change so fast. Like next day, that could be a 40. And I know this because I was on the post-game show with Jake Lisco last week. And I was like, yeah, I don't think the interior played crazy good. Like if Volson was back in there and whatever, he's like, Volson had an 80 in the PFF immediate grade. And I was like, I don't think that's going to hold. And it didn't. He ended up like a 50 something. So okay. I think those grades are kind of, I wouldn't say those. I would say they are correct from my viewing in this. I don't think Alex Kappa had a good game. I think that the two interior monsters for the Titans showed up, and it happened to anybody they faced, because there was also a Jeff Simmons play against Cochran. The only guy I think played extremely well on this offensive line today was Amarius Mims. I thought Karras was all right. I thought the guards weren't, and I thought Cochran was interesting, but if you had to grade it, probably not going to grade well. So I thought Mims was good, though. I thought it was one of his better games. I don't 100% know who he was going up against the entire game, because I'm not sure. It would make sense to me. I guess I should have been more aware. It would make sense to me if it was Harold Landry, who's an all right player, but I also am like, he might be injured, because I didn't hear anything from this guy, and I don't know. I don't see him on the injury report. Maybe he's on IR or something. I don't want to slander anybody that I didn't know, but I will just say I didn't see any pressure really from Mims' side in this game. I saw it from everybody else, but not him.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. You want to hear that out of your rookie draft pick, and hopefully he's there for years and years and years, and he's protecting Joe Burrow. So that's always a good thing, and the experience that he's getting out there in his first year in the NFL. We'll talk about offensive line as the week goes on when it comes to Cody Ford probably being back out there, what it looks like for interior. I don't know what moves you can possibly make right now in season on the roster. I don't think that they're going to do the Matt Lee move. Maybe they will surprise us, but obviously Alex Kappa and Cordell Volson are a liability out there. And it's crazy to think about this run game, what Chase Brown has been able to do despite his offensive line in the interior. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But can we talk about Chase Brown a little bit? Because honestly, I saw this tweet earlier this week, and actually talking to some friends, and one of them mentioned, if Chase Brown was the running back number 1 to start the season, the starting running back for them, maybe some of these games look just a little bit different. Maybe they control the Patriots game. Maybe they find a way to win that game. Maybe they do better in some of the losses that they took early on in the season, if that change would have happened sooner. It's just been really fun to see with Chase Brown. I still think this team adds another second running back in the offseason, but he's not going to be taken too much away from Chase Brown, because he's a weapon. He's a weapon out there, and not only as a running back, but obviously a receiving weapon too. And I think that's just been really fun to watch. Can you just talk a little bit about Chase Brown in this game and just kind of overall right now in December, where he stands?
Supreme athlete. He's a guy that looks shot out of a cannon anytime he gets the ball. I think he definitely has the juice, and he's shown it this year that he can be the lead guy on an offense. Right now, he's kind of a bell cow. I mean, he gets the ball so much that it's hard to say that this is a committee because it's not. Hasn't been since at least Zach Moss got injured. I'm not opposed to a committee with him just because he had a lot of wear and tear at Illinois, and it lengthens your career to not get 30 touches in a game. So I'm not opposed to that. I wish Khalil Herbert would get a little bit more run because I think he's a pretty good runner, but for whatever reason, he isn't here, and he wasn't this year in Chicago either. So when it happens with two staffs, it might be the player, even if he's doing okay when he gets on the field. Did have that fumble on the handoff, but it's kind of a whatever play to me. I will say Chase Brown, good, and much better receiving back than I thought coming out and in his first season. His first season, he could catch like a screen and then go be an athlete. Now I think he seems like actually a good receiving back, and he's pulling up the pass pro as well. It's getting better. Give up a pressure in this game, I recognized, but other than that, I mean, that happens. Running backs are not going to be perfect in pass protection. They got a tough job of taking on guys that are coming at them full speed. So won't say that it was a bad performance from there. I think he's pulling together to show he can be the lead dog on a good offense. I don't think he's a guy like you build around or anything, like build the offense around him like the Eagles did with Saquon. But I do think he's a good player. I think he's a very good athlete. I think the vision is spotty at times, and I think the Bengals recognize that too, and that's why Zach Moss was getting some of those carries. But I think also he's shown like it doesn't always matter. Like Kenneth Walker, another guy, it's like spotty vision, but he's so good otherwise that like it doesn't really matter. And then so I'm perfectly fine not really addressing the running back room much this offseason. If they want to keep Herbert, that's cool. If they want to find some type of guy that can maybe, to me, the only thing missing, I don't think Chase Brown is a good short yardage running back. I think that's the only thing I'm really missing with him. And I think he did score a touchdown short yardage in this game. But
this was a wild game.
Khalil Herbert was great at it in Chicago. That's why I thought maybe that would be his role. It doesn't seem like he's taken that role. When I envision a short yardage guy, I envision a bigger back than him, somebody that's like 220 pounds. Just want to see somebody that can take that from him, maybe, because those are also, I think, carries that are they take a toll on you because you're running into brick walls, you're running straight into the defense, you're not going to get out of bounds on this play, you're going to take a hit, you're going to have guys lay on top of you, hit your legs, whatever. That grimy role, you can usually find those guys on day 3 of the draft or cheap in free agency. Just thinking of some other short yardage guys around the league. So I'm thinking you could find that and then just have Chase Brown do basically everything else and then just save his body from those short yardage plays. But yeah, I think Chase Brown was great in this game.
Yeah, he's having a great season. Could see him possibly get into the Pro Bowl, and we'll see what else he has in store the next 3 games. But it's really been fun to watch when it comes to this offense in general and having a running back like him. And I still think that the Bengals will address interior in the offseason. I don't know if it's free agency or if it's in the NFL draft, but an upgrade there will be huge for him going forward too. In the run game and just for Joe Burrow's protection overall. I want to give one quick shout out before we move on to the defense really quickly as we wrap up this post-game podcast. Shout out to Sam Hubbard, touchdown, 2-yard touchdown. Good to see.
Yeah, injured his PCL, he thinks, on that play, sadly. Great catch. Did double catch it, so if you want a little bit of critique, but went up there, high pointed it, came down with it. It's very cool that he was able to catch a touchdown. Because he's been a fullback before. This was actually, I think, him lined up on the line of scrimmage, if I'm remembering right, but maybe I'm wrong. And catching that touchdown, very cool. I mean, it might be his last season in Cincinnati. And as much as we have talked about, like, oh, we need to give Murphy more snaps, probably at the expense of Hubbard, it's not because we don't like Hubbard or didn't appreciate him throughout his career. I mean, I think he was awesome. He was huge on those playoff runs. He developing into a solid pass rusher in his prime while also being one of the best run defenders. I think that was great. And I think that was a big reason why the 21-22 defenses were so good. But when it's time, it's time. So it was very cool to me that he was able to catch a touchdown in what could be his final year in Cincinnati. Maybe it's not, but if you're trying to read the tea leaves in terms of
Yeah.
the resources they've spent, the money that could go there, the money that is being spent on this defensive line without production, I don't know. So I think it could be. I'm not gonna say it is, but very cool that he was able to catch a touchdown in this game, and felt like a. I hope it's not a swan song completely though. Like I don't want him to be so injured that he can't play the rest of the year. I mean, he's
Hopefully
talking about
they
putting him on, letting him rest out the rest of the year so that the young guys get to play. But I just don't want it. I don't know. I don't want it to be a real injury that impacts that
No,
too.
no, no, no. Definitely don't want that. And I agree with you. If it was his last play in Cincinnati, obviously it was a positive one. But hopefully Sam can get some good injury news. And look, this team hopefully has more than 3 games left to play. But we'll see what happens. They need some luck on their end, but they can control winning, and they did today. So that was good. Defensively, it was kind of a crazy day. Honestly, at times I didn't recognize this defense. I obviously know who they were playing against. It's not like it was a fabulous quarterback play from Will Levis and then Mason Rudolph out there. But Geno Stone, pick 6, getting some interception and turnovers. Jordan Battle, do not celebrate until you get into the end zone. Lesson learned there for him. And even Zach Taylor said, they tell the players, get 2 feet in. And as soon as you get to that logo or whatever's in the end zone, then you can do your celebrating because you are in there. You've already scored. It is over. And that was unfortunate for him because obviously that would have been really cool to see 2 pick sixes in that game. But overall, defense.
I feel like the defense when Levis was out there, it obviously looked good. I don't think Levis passed the test in terms of can this guy be a starter in the NFL. I think he failed that horrendously with 3 interceptions before the third quarter ended and getting benched. And I think they only had like 10 points from him. And really, they were scoring when they could just run the ball nonstop. Mm-hmm. So Bengals defense to me has been the watermark test of can this guy start in the NFL? And Daniel Jones got cut a little bit after the Bengals game, didn't do it. Watson, obviously, no. And then this game, Levis, I'm going, no. Minshew Ritter in Vegas, no. Oh, I need to see it against a good defense, against a good offense. I think when Rudolph came in, you kind of saw what this Bengals defense has been. Like if a quarterback is patient, takes a check down, this defense misses tackles, this defense lets yards up underneath, this defense has struggled to get pressure a little bit. I do think Rudolph's time to throw was probably very fast. That's what I had to feel when I was watching that his time to throw was very quick because I felt like pressure was getting there. I thought Murphy actually had a few. And actually on the Newton interception that Rudolph threw, I saw Murphy pushing, I believe it was J.C. Latham, like right into his lap. So I do think that, they showed some life, but I think also you kind of look at this, you go like, all right, they didn't, especially early in the game, they didn't defend the run well before they got turnovers. And then they also, when Rudolph got in there, they were giving up a lot of yards underneath. So I'm very hesitant to say anything about great about this defense. I think it was better. I think it was a better performance. They were opportunistic. They caught basically every turnover that they possibly could. And if Battle, score first, then celebrate. What are you celebrating before you score? You haven't scored. Score, then celebrate.
Yeah.
But Battle scored that, insane performance by this defense production-wise. But I just think, you can see the cracks, too. You can see, Rudolph's just driving down the field, just throwing 2-yard passes the entire way. You gotta have some way to defend against that. And maybe they were just, the argument would be, well, you're up 3 scores. You're just kind of playing back and letting them do that. I don't know. I would buy that if the Steelers didn't open the game with that strategy and go for their best performance since Ben Roethlisberger was a decent quarterback.
Man, would love to have that Steelers game back right now. Especially where they're at. That would just be.
There's a lot of games.
There is. The 2 Ravens games.
Go to me. Yeah, the Ravens ones, both of those. If they won both those, it would be so funny to see the Ravens are 2-0 against the Bengals, and it has propped them up to being they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to Lamar Jackson's awesome, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about the media stuff, but they're right in position to make the playoffs. The Bengals won those games. I think these teams are pretty similar. The main difference to me is the Bengals have a little bit of an inability to close games, but the bad kicker, that's on both. It's just I think Tucker is kind of, when they've needed a game winner, he's hit it. And then they both have bad defenses, but I think the Bengals one is like,
it has to be worse.
it is worse. It is worse than the Ravens defense, but the Ravens defense also isn't good. So I feel like these are very similar teams. It's just ball bounces one way and not the other. So it is what it is. Like Evan McPherson makes that field goal and they beat the Ravens that week. Whatever. And maybe they get the penalty in the other game, the face mask, one of the 3 face masks on the 2-point conversion.
Or they don't call the penalty in the 4th and 16 Chiefs game. I mean, there's just so many.
Yeah, the Chiefs one, yeah. But the Ravens one, I just keep going back to. Like the Patriots, whatever, they start slow. Like it's a stupid game to lose. That's a ridiculous one to lose, but I've kind of lived with it. The Chiefs one,
I've just kind of got over it.
Who doesn't the Chiefs have voodoo magic against? They have voodoo magic against everybody this year. But the Ravens haven't. Like if you win those 2 games, these teams look strikingly similar. They probably both make the playoffs, but instead you'll lose them both. And that's where you are. But anyway, yeah, this is all just because I saw cracks in this defense that make me a little concerned about any possible serious push from them.
Okay. We'll see what happens. I agree with you. I don't believe in the defense. They could have had
it's easy not to, right?
they could have had 17 pick sixes and I would have said not enough. Sorry.
That's with Will Levis being a bozo, yeah.
Sorry, you didn't do enough this year. And look, like I told you on our last podcast, how I was ending it. Am I scoreboard watching these other games after the Bengals win? 100%. Because it beats Mike 2 weeks ago when I thought every single week I'm going to have to watch this team lose for 5 weeks straight and talk about the offseason and draft. I will take being just a little bit in it. You still, for how bad the season has gone, to play for something. Today's the first time I heard Joe Burrow say, we're not out of it yet. He said, look, we need other teams. We're going to need help from other teams. But he said, we're not out of it right now. And I thought, wow, because for about 3 weeks now, he has pretty much said, we're not, it's over. We're not, it's just, they didn't control. And look, it might be, the percentage is so low for them and the Broncos and Colts that you need it to work out that way. You need the Dolphins to lose one more game down the stretch. We'll see what happens, but man, I really hope that we get to watch this offense play more than 3 games this year, just with how Joe Burrow has played. But look, it'll take a little bit of a miracle, so we'll see how that works out. I do want to talk later on the podcast this week when you go back and you watch the film review. I didn't want to get too deep into it because I think it'll be a longer discussion when it comes to Myles Murphy and his game out there. And you can go back and watch more of the tape and we'll go over on the defensive side and just the offensive side overall. But I do want to mention what you said, earlier in the podcast. It didn't feel like it was a bad game from Burrow just because he does amazing Burrow magic. And look, you can have turnovers. It's not the end of the world. It didn't really impact the game at all. Really felt like they were in the driver's seat for most of it. It was a pretty just like, can this game end? Because it's absolutely silly moment, a couple times. But other than that, still having an incredible year. Another 300 yards plus performance, multi-touchdown game. And still one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. So hopefully this offense continues to look like this in the final 3 regular season games. We'll talk about the defense and more on Tuesday's podcast. You probably have that piece on Chris Jenkins coming out soon.
Soon. I want to add this game. So I'm going to wait until I watch the defense in this game, throw it in there just to make sure everything still makes sense, because I feel like I didn't notice him too much in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely noticed him. I think I one good play, but it's hard to see defensive tackles. It's hard to have a real opinion about how a defensive tackle played when they're not doing like Geno Atkins type stuff, when they're just, like doing their job because of the way the angle of the camera is, where it's on that side instead of straight on. So I want to watch this game, have that. But yeah, I'm going to have a Chris Jenkins article this week. So got that to look forward to. Also, would be remiss to not mention my draft crush, T'Vondre Sweat, on that fumble return, the longest return for a 330-plus pound player since the year 2000, at least. That's just when it started getting tracked. The stiff arm on Kappa was hilarious. Like,
it's
I'm so glad that this is the one part that I am glad that they are not like deep in the like this game was life or death. This was, to me, I'm still pretty agnostic about the whole thing. Like, if they win next week and they go face the Broncos and, like, there's, like, if they beat the Broncos, there's a 60% chance to make the playoffs. I'm fully back in. But right now, I'm still just like, whatever.
I don't blame you.
But the T'Vondre Sweat fumble recovery and return was incredible. I've watched it, like, 5 times. And I know it happened against the Bengals, the team I support. but it's so fun. It's so fun that he was so ready to keep dishing out stiff arms. Like he stiff arm Kappa to the ground, and I think he was upset that he had good blocking because it looked like he was coming for Karras next. Or if that was
Oh my gosh. Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. You know what? I'm okay with watching that stuff when my team wins. You know, when my team wins by a bunch and like it's a bunch, they won by 10, but they really felt like they were winning by more than that several times. So that stuff doesn't bother me. So I'll have to go back and watch the clip because I only watched it once and I couldn't believe it. Actually, I could believe it with what he was doing out there. But yeah, he was one of your guys, and I think a lot of people would love him in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it didn't fall enough. Like I don't blame the Bengals for not taking him round one. You get like that DUI and everything. You already had issues like that. Like I fully understand. Do not take him round one. There's probably other guys you could point to if you wanted to. I think Mims is a pretty good first round pick though. That we'll see over the next couple of years. But yeah, loved him in the draft, and then that fumble return was crazy. McKinley Jackson had a big play too.
Yes, we'll talk more about him.
Yeah. So we'll probably talk more about it later, but great get off. I think he could be like a Larry Ogunjobi light. I don't think he is like a true nose tackle. Like that's the weird part, that he doesn't do nose tackle stuff. And I said this when I watched him for that draft. I was like, he doesn't really do nose tackle stuff. So it's kind of weird that he's like a 340-pound Larry Ogunjobi type, where he's just fire off the ball. Okay. Sometimes a little bit of guessing, sometimes getting in the wrong gap, sometimes getting beat up by some double teams. But when it works, you get a play like that. It wasn't a sack because it was a called run play for Will Levis for whatever reason. But that forced fumble on Will Levis on that big play where he just shoots into the backfield. I think it was Levis. Maybe I've got plays mixed up. Either way, great play from him. Stood out in a good way on that play. So both nose tackles, both the top two nose tackles taken, had some big plays. But that T'Vondre Sweat, when you watch the clip again, watch him raise his hand back up after he
was coming for Karras next.
He was looking for more.
And I'm not going to forget that now. He was coming for Karras now. Now I have to see it. I'll watch it after we do this podcast. Make sure you check out Mike's work over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. And then over on Twitter, I'll have all the breakdowns from the games. Fantastic stuff. Bengals_Sand. You can follow me at Lindsay Patterson. We'll be back later this week to talk a little more breakdown of the film and then looking ahead to the Bengals and Browns back at Paycor Stadium on Sunday. Thank you for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.